So let's move on to question number 17. Ancestral Puebloans, the civilization from which present-day Pueblo tribes descended, emerged as early as 1500 B.C.E. in an area of what is now the southwestern United States and dispersed suddenly in the late 1200s. Observe late 1200s CE, abandoning established villages with systems for farming crops and turkeys. So they are farming crops and turkeys, they had systems for that. Recent analysis comparing turkey remains at Mesa Verde, one such village in southern Colorado, to samples from modern turkey populations in the Rio Grande Valley of north-central New Mexico determined that the latter birds descended in part from turkeys cultivated at Mesa Verde with shared genetic markers appearing only after 1280. Thus, researchers concluded that blank. Which choice most logically completes the text? It says the conditions of the terrains in Rio Grande Valley and Mesa Verde had greater similarities in the past than they do today. This is incorrect because the text never compares the condition of Rio Grande Valley's terrain to that of Mesa Verde's terrain, either in the present or in the past. And B is the best answer because this one says some ancestral Puebloans migrated to the Rio Grande Valley in the late 1200s and carried farming practices with them. So B is the best answer because it presents the conclusion that most logically follows from the text discussion of ancestral Puebloans migration into the Rio Grande Valley. The text states that in the late 1200 CE, the ancestral Puebloan civilization abandoned villages in its original homeland, which included the Mesa Verde site. And then the text goes on to say that the recent genetic analysis has demonstrated that modern turkey population, that is the birds, modern turkey populations, what they are showing that the latter birds descended in parts from turkeys cultivated in Mesa Verde. Genetic markers shared by the two turkey populations, that is those birds, first appeared at Mesa Verde only after 1280. Therefore, it can reasonably be concluded that some ancestral Puebloans migrated to the Rio Grande Valley in the late 1200s and they also carried their agricultural practices including the farming of turkeys to their new home. That's why they had that genetic evidence, we can say. Okay. And then choice C is incorrect because this one says indigenous people living in the Rio Grande Valley primarily planted crops and did not cultivate turkeys before 1280. So this is incorrect because although genetic analysis has demonstrated that modern turkey population in the Rio Grande Valley descended in part from turkey population raised by the ancestral Puebloans of Mesa Verde before their migration to the valley in 1280, this finding does eliminate the possibility that indigenous people living in the valley before 1280 might also have farmed turkeys. Just because they brought their turkeys from there, it doesn't mean that these people did not have their own they didn't plant crops and they didn't have their own turkey cultivation. Okay. And then D says the ancestral Puebloans of Mesa Verde likely adopted the farming practices of indigenous peoples living in other regions. So choice D is also incorrect. The text doesn't consider the possibility that before their migration in the Rio Grande Valley after 1280, the ancestral Puebloans of Mesa Verde might have adopted turkey farming from an outside indigenous civilization in another region. Instead, the text provides evidence suggesting that the ancestral Puebloans brought turkey farming to another region, the Rio Grande Valley, after 1280. So the best one will be B only. So they carried some farming practices with them. I hope that's it.